It's time for Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock.
Believe me when I say we have a difficult time ahead of us. But if we are to be prepared for it, we must first shed our fear of it. I stand here without fear because I remember that I am here not because of the path that lies before me, but because of the path that lies behind me. I remember that for 100 years we have fought these machines. And after a century of war, I remember that which matters most. We are still here! Tonight, let us make them remember we are not afraid!
Independent to me, Ernest Hancock from the Sonoran Desert, and we're going to be talking to our very special guest, Dr. Mary Ruwart. You know, we're going to get reintroduced to the audience here because you need to. This is going to be, an interesting show. We don't have a timeline. We're trying to keep it down to, 1-2 hours, which means 5. But we'll go ahead and, get it going because I want to make sure this is a person that is foundational to understanding the decades of libertarianism and how it's impacted the planet. And we're going to be doing this again. Well, of course, we got to talk to Mary because we got to talk to Mary. Mary's always been popular in the Libertarian Party, Libertarian movement, and she's known for a lot of things, but a lot of them you'll see on the screen here, a lot of her books. Healing Our World was a big thing. Yeah, this is us at the... That's John Bush there on the right, and we're at Ron Paul's 90th birthday party in Texas. Now, she lives in Texas, north of Austin. Now, let me go ahead and do a little bit of bio here, and you'll see how this intersects. Dr. Mary Ruwart is a research scientist, ethicist, and libertarian author activist. What's interesting, we're going to be focusing on the ethical part. Normally they just scan over that, but she puts that up there, and that's what we're going to be talking about. She received her BS in biochemistry in 70, her PhD in biophysics in 74, both from Michigan State University. She subsequently joined the Department of Surgery at St. Louis University, left her assistant professorship there to accept a position with the Upjohn Company of Kalamazoo, Michigan in 76. As a senior research scientist, Dr. Ruwart was involved in developing new therapies for a variety of diseases. Liver cirrhosis, AIDS, a bunch of them. Then it goes on about her medical career, so that's enough on that. But since 1982, Dr. Ruwart has also been involved in societal ethics, with a focus on the political theory and practice of libertarianism. Her award-winning international best-selling book, Healing Our World, demonstrates how the ethical application of libertarian principles has historically created harmony and abundance. That's what we're going to be talking about. Now, the thing is that when you get attacked by they, them, those, that, yeah, but you, in this one line you said, and it's all consistent. It's all, Ron Paul kind of stuff. It's that libertarian freedom's that's what's the question thing. And that is what they, them, those go after. What we're going to be talking about is a project that a bunch of us are working on, the Philosophy of Liberty, short 8-minute animation. It started with Jonathan Gullible, Ken Schoolin is, another, old guard Mary, and they're good friends. And Mary is heavily involved with Liberty International now. We're going to talk about that. She was on the Libertarian National Committee for many years. Got to see, the sausage made there, a long time ago. And we were heavily involved. That's how we know each other. I was, Ernie activist being Ernie. But the thing is that this project is one of those I will sink my teeth into, and we need the opinion of people like Mary. Just a touchstone, kind of, what's up? So we're going to be talking about this, and you'll see why as we get into the show. Mary, add to your introduction whatever you need to make sure people to know you to get filled in on what's up. Say hello.
Hi. It's good to be here, Ernie. Good to connect with you again.
I am looking forward to this. This is one, we went too long go by. I'm glad you're still involved. How involved are you? Are you retired and on vacation and a hobby of politics or philosophy or activism? And what's going on?
Well, I did the last revision of Healing Our World and Death by Regulation back to back. So I got kind of burned out of writing. So I've stopped that for a while, but I'm getting ready maybe to go back in. And in the meantime, I've focused on Liberty International. I'm chair of that organization. And we have meetings usually in other countries. We were in Argentina this year because, well, there's a libertarian president. So we wanted to give him an award and find out what was going on there. And
what is going on there? How libertarian is he?
Yes, lots of good things. So when Javier Milei took office, inflation was 200% annually, and he's cut it down to 30% in the first year, and he intends to cut it down, of course, even further in his second year. And he's slashed government spending by 30%, if I recall correctly. And I'll tell you, in Argentina, they regulate everything. So he's trying to get rid of all that. They regulate the kind of cardboard boxes things can be shipped in, and things like that.
Why? Is it just to make money? It's because they give their cousin Fred a job? What is the reason?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know all the history. All I know is that what has resulted is, you can barely do anything without getting government permission. And that's, Javier Milei campaigned with a chainsaw saying he was going to cut government. And now what's happening, the toy industry has made these little toy chainsaws for children so that, they can imitate Javier Milei. Awesome. And the World Economic Forum actually invited him to come. And I thought, oh, Klaus Schwab does not know who this guy is.
No idea.
I think he thought he could persuade Javier.
That's how they think. Okay, yeah, let's stop right there. Let's put a pin in that right there. Javier goes to World Economic Forum and so on, because, of course, we published all that. This is the thing that we ran into. As activists in Arizona, what happened, and you remember those days in the 90s, late 90s, sure, whatever. What happened was, Wall Street Journal, Arizona, the libertarian state, damn it, we got to go fix that. But what happened was, finally, the Arizona Republic, the main newspaper, damn it, we can't get away from these guys. All right, fine. We're going to go ahead and put them on the editorial page, send them the questionnaires, have them go and do the editorial board, just like everybody else, everything. Well, they thought the same as Klaus Schwab, that, we give them some attention, they'll start to bend a little bit. What can we, and they even offered. They had Rick Tompkins, that was the state chair at the time, before I even became a libertarian, early 90s, when we first started doing newspapers and so on. They brought us in, and they go, well, what do you want? What issues? Give a couple of, we'll do that. I go, man, you guys have no idea. We don't pick it's freedom thing. What they were trying to negotiate a deal, because we kept mucking up their plan to rule the world or whatever, and they were going to try to throw us a bone if we'd shut up. That was going on. Then by the less than 7, 8 years later, finally they go, all right, well, we're going to expose this libertarian philosophy to everybody and show just how crazy conspiracy wacko they are. So then they do the questions. Of course, you get the libertarian answers, for even the answer, what's the question? And they didn't like it. They were like, whoa, because the audience, their readers, were like, yeah, what they said. Oh, my God. They go, we can't do that anymore. We're not going to be able to make fun of them. So Klaus Schwab, you could tell, was in the same mindset.
Yes,
they think if we can articulate to the world and to the business leaders and the young world communist leaders, collectivists, are us people, that he gets up there, we'll show just how foolish he is or how this is not going to work. And I'm going, man, you guys, if Javier doesn't fold,
well, he didn't.
It's going to be a thing.
Not only didn't he fold, he told the World Economic Forum that they were the problem. So Klaus Schwab made a video that gave us the best advertisement libertarians ever got. They said libertarians are the ones that are preventing us from completing our agenda. We couldn't, couldn't pay for it. We couldn't purchase an endorsement like that.
Okay, now this is why you're the perfect person to talk to about this. Healing our world and an ethicist, describe that. Let's talk about that. Mm-hmm. What the hell did you put that on my bio? I'm an ethicist. What does that mean?
Well, actually, at the time I did that, a lot of ethicists did not have formal training, but I did have some because I was in the medical, as you said, the medical area. And one of the big ethical areas is medicine. So I designed a course for the University of North Carolina in Charlotte, and it was kind of fun because I could come from a libertarian perspective on a lot of these things, which is very different from what standard medical ethics is. They don't go as deeply as one might like. And
where's
so
the pharma check? I get it.
Yeah. So anyhow, I had a lot of fun doing that, and that they brought me in as an ethicist. Basically, they brought me into the biology department, but my role was to work with the ethics department, which was a new department there at the university.
Why?
And represent the biology department. Every department had to see, because it didn't have a regular. The ethics department was just getting started, so it didn't have a.
Why? Why would they start? Since when do they give a crap about ethics? What the hell does that even mean, anyway?
Medical ethics is actually a big thing, and it's been a big thing for a long time. That's what drives who gets the transplant, who gets the organ, right. Things like that. So
death panel.
So anyhow, and of course there's a lot of ethical decisions that get made in the medical area, as you probably saw during COVID. They wasn't too ethical, but decisions were made.
Decisions were made. That's the best way. Decisions were made.
Yeah, like no informed consent, mandates with experimental vaccines. This is all anti-ethical, if you will. And so this is part of the big problem we had during COVID is we threw our ethics totally out the window. The medical ethics up to that point in time insisted on informed consent. Well, there was no informed consent because the package insert for the COVID vaccine was 16 blank pages. And it says right on the page, deliberately left blank or something to that effect.
But they put the paper in.
Yeah, they put the paper in because by law they have to. They have to have a package insert, so they had to have something. But there was no information. So
the thing folded out into like a, I don't know, 2-foot square or something. It was
I said 16, but it could have been more.
That was just such a slap in the face. It's just neon flashing. We're going to screw you and get over it. They're just going through the motions. So this is why an ethicist, libertarian ethicist, which is what? What's the foundation that they worked from? Is it, Hippocrates, first do no harm. Well, they don't give a crap about that. And then, you come in as a libertarian. What was your foundation? You own yourself? What?
Well, my foundation was the NAP, of course, the non-aggression principle. And you would think that the medical profession would have that principle as well. But the do no harm is about as far as they got. And frankly, that just was totally gone during the COVID years, as you saw.
Okay, so, non-aggression principle. Spend a little time on that. Libertarians are very familiar with that, but, give us a detail on that, will you please?
Yeah, so the non-aggression principle basically says that as libertarians, we don't initiate, and that's an important word, initiate physical force, fraud, or theft against others. And if we do, we try to restore our victim. And it's interesting because when I lectured in the universities and colleges and high schools in Kalamazoo, Michigan, which I did for about 10 years. I had people who regularly brought me in for that hour for social studies or government. And before I even got started in my talk, I put 3 things on the board. I put the majority should rule the minority. I'm sorry, I'm getting this backwards. The minority should rule the majority, number 1. The majority should rule the minority, number 2. Or everyone should rule themselves as long as they don't initiate physical force, fraud, or theft against others. And then I asked the students before I even started my lecture to vote on which ethical or philosophy did they want their government to be based on. And almost all of them, like 95% in all of the classes, voted for the non-aggression principle, which of course was number 3. And then I asked, how do you perceive that the US government operates today? I think in the 10 years that I was giving this quiz to all these students, only one of them voted for number 3, the non-aggression principle, and everybody else thought either the minority was ruling the majority or the majority was ruling the minority, which shows you that people naturally embrace, at least philosophically, embrace the non-aggression principle. Now, of course, when I started explaining the application of it to taxation, for example, a lot of people were really shocked by that because, of course, their question was, how do we have government services without taxation? And of course, the libertarian answer is these services are better provided by the private sector. But
or not, does not
or
provided.
Not, yes, or not, yes, depending on the service itself, because some of the quote services are not very worthy of service.
This is one point that I wanted to make sure we made. When Ken Schoolin was going on about Jonathan Goebel, when it first started being, the philosophy of liberty was kind of an introduction to that in Russia. Mm-hmm. Well, in early 90s, when he does this, and it's all, been building up through the 80s and so on, he gets into Russia, and then one of the guys goes, well, man, we'll print this, Well, it gets past Russian and Chinese and Korean and Japanese censors because it's an animation, again, whatever. They don't look at, paths that it creates for your neurons to go down. I mean, they don't see it at a foundational, fundamental, a 6-year-old gets, and all of a sudden he's a, kick butt freedom activist by the time he's 14. So this is, when they did it in Russia, you had to explain private property. You had to explain taxation. You had to explain these fundamental concepts. If you were to do that there, they would have gone, well, of course the minority's got to control the majority, or the majority owns means of production, or just some crap. They'll come up with something. And it's a moral, ethical question. It's exactly. Not what do you want? I bet a lot of the students, especially, future senator in his suit and coat, tie, sitting in the back of the room, it's the minority rules the majority. If I'm part of the minority, I mean, not planning on being part of the minority. So, just go to Harvard. So, this is part of what I'm talking about. This is, I'm 64, man. I mean, you remember me as young 30-year-old, 28, whatever, back in the day. That freaking kid Ernie doing whatever. Well, after a while, we come of age and you get gray and bald. You go, oh, we're here, So now I understand the power of why you were so attacked on healing our world. It was a moral, ethical look at the non-aggression principle, self-ownership. You're robbing, stealing from me, and that's bad. They go, oh, it's not bad if it's for the common good and eminent domain of the blah, blah, blah. I mean, so libertarian philosophy, and it's always sprouts up where it's the worst. Argentina, man, is having some problems. Well, Javier, he's rock and roll into libertarianism and going to get some. So at the time, that was campaign before the vote actually happened. One of the Arizona Project kids, or a couple of them, were from Argentina that year. on and so on. And I ask him about it. He's like, well, it's just kind of that regular classical, classic libertarian officer kind of thing. Well, if you sign your name pretty and wear a tie and cut your hair and don't say too outlandish things there, you might get more votes. Same kind of crap we've been hearing all the time. So I'm going, you guys have no idea what's coming. You watch what happens. This is what it's going to be. Freedom's the answer, what's the question kind of thing. After the election, I had her back on. And I go, so, how'd that work out? She said, man, you were right. What the hell, Because they have no reference to ethics. They don't understand the power of Grandma said. They don't understand the power. And this is what Ron Paul was saying a lot during the 08 campaign, certainly. If we don't do this now, we will lose the understanding, the meaning, even reference to these words that we keep slinging around. Freedom, liberty, leave me aloneism, whatever. We won't even get it. We'll be in St. Petersburg, Russia, going, well, of course the minority rules the majority. You see my point? Mm-hmm. That's why the philosophy of liberty and this is a project. Because I know, they hate when I say that. I go, I don't think I know. I know. Got a bunch of T-shirts, okay? That the philosophy of liberty, the understanding of it, is extremely powerful, and even, especially, the most darkest places. America's getting dark. Mm-hmm. And when this economy starts, it's going to be a food thing. They go, when do you know it's going to go? Food. It's going to be a food thing. Unavailable, too expensive. Mm-hmm. Well, it's going to be a food thing. I just, we're out in the desert, and we grow it in the desert because it's going to be a food thing. So this is why I'm doing this. Being an ethicist, what do you think is going to happen? What's coming? And I don't care about the economy and this. It's the philosophy. Has that shifted from the time that you went into the class and you got 90 whatever % going, well, of course, you don't bother people and break stuff, you hurt them, you're good, to it shifting. Well, we got identity politics. Well, it depends. Are they woke enough? I mean, what is it that's going to happen ethically? Pontificate. Monologue me.
Well, that's a good question. I think a lot of people woke up during COVID. I think people naturally don't want to believe that the government is their enemy, that it is actually initiating forced fraud and theft against them. In fact, when I talk about that to a naive audience, they really have a problem with that. And I think it's partly because, well, for the same reason an abused child would rather believe that they are at fault and they have to be punished by their abusive parents rather than believe that their parents don't love them. It's the same thing with government. We have a hard time embracing the idea that government is exploitation of us. And that might not have been true in the very early days of our country, although I think
it was a goal for a lot of people. They're just going to use the
although, but of course it did evolve into that very quickly, even if it wasn't. I can't be sure, but there were things already. I mean, our founding fathers and mothers did not always agree on what the government should look like. I mean, there were people who basically wanted to have a system very similar to what, the British had. They wanted a federal bank. That actually happened in the early days of our country, and Andrew Jackson killed it, at least for a while. Then we got the Fed in the early 1900s. And that, of course, while it technically isn't a government institution, what happened is governments, Congress had been authorized to handle the currency, and it passed it over to a private entity, the Fed, which, of course, it has been exploitive. And, we pay taxes, but even greater than that is the inflation that the Fed has created, because government is borrowing money to make all those promises good. Then they promise free things to people. And so that has to come from somewhere. And it's actually, of course, coming from what we call the inflation tax, which is greater than the income tax in my mind. So this is why ethics is so important. And the Libertarian Party, when it was founded, was an ethical, principled organization, or at least tried to be. But, that started to go down. You were talking about history a little earlier. That started to change in the late 80s, early 90s. Already in our strategic strategy, the strategy sessions we had, where we were going to pick certain goals to look at in the Libertarian Party. I think one of the most hotly debated was, one of the proposed goals was, remain the party of principle as we grow. How could you even think that that wasn't a good idea to have as a goal? Well, of course, the opponent said, well, you can't measure it, but of course you can. What do your candidates believe in terms of matching up what they're saying against the, against the paperwork that we put together, basically the platform of what we support as libertarians. And basically, that's been, we have not remained the party of principle. I think we're rebuilding now, and I've been speaking about getting that back in there and not deviating from it, because we thought we could win elections, but the whole thing's rigged. We don't have to win election. Our ideas have to win the elections. Boom. And, in a sense they have, because the president of the United States is talking about getting rid of the income tax. I remember back in the late 70s, early 80s, we were the only people talking about that. We were the only party talking about gay rights. And of course, we were the only party talking about ending the drug war. And while we haven't totally ended it, at least marijuana is legal to some extent in most of the states, even though the federal government still kind of ignores that. But there's not a whole lot they can do when all the states have legalized it. So, this is, our ideas can win, but we got so wrapped up in winning elections, we didn't educate people coming into the party anymore. When I joined the party, our county meetings were about looking at the ISIL idea pamphlets and debating them, and that's ISIL. We have had the acronym of ISIL, so we got hacked. And that's why we became Liberty International, because the third time our website got hacked by people who thought we were terrorists, we had to change the name.
Yeah, that's what they say. When Obama started doing that, he started referring to ISIS as ISIL or whatever. That was right after we had done the translation into Arabic. And I'm going, what the crap? And you guys changed? Screw them. That's more attention, but, if you're getting hacked all the time, so whatever. But
what can you do?
Well, this is the point that I'm making. If I would put on my conspiratorial, whatever future, do a movie kind of, Ernie thinks thing, it would go like this. It's 2035. You're looking back. You start to see that, everything a lot of the activists and crazy people have been saying is true. The conspiracists are, like batting 1,000, So you look back and you go, was this by design? Abso-freaking-lutely. That if you wanted to hollow out America, which means what? The middle class. Why'd you rob the bank? Because that's where the money is, okay? Why did you take away the freedom and rob everybody or whatever in America? Because that's where the money is. It's the middle class. Our middle class are freaking royalty and, probably 80% of the world. So this is an attack on our productivity because they can. And they keep doing it. They're feasting on, the dead whale, the sharks, until it's just bones. It goes to the bottom of the ocean. Well, that's what's happening. Why? Because they can. It's no more complicated than that. You have sociopathic behavior. This is, all right, Mary, this is a tangent. I want you to help me out with this.
Okay.
I didn't understand, he's a sociopath, a psychopath, a path, he's got the wrong path of the path. I never knew what the hell that meant. I know it was a bad thing or crazy or mean or something, but I didn't really understand the fundamentals of it. It was a House episode, and us doing the Trump report, Dr. Tamburi and I have been doing that for, God, since he came down the escalator, God, like over 10 years. Oh, my God. So this is, and I'm like, you're still voting? You know me, man. I'm like, you're still voting? So that really pisses them off. But the idea that you have a sociopath label, and I wondered, what does that mean? Well, he's a doctor. He goes on about and reads the sociopath next door and yada, yada, yada. All of a sudden it clicked. All of my activism, when you meet with legislators, you meet with the governor, you run for Senate, Congress, you're back in the green room with all these people, you go, there's something wrong with these people because they'd say the stupidest crap, and I'm going, wow, really? Now they may not say it publicly, or a lot of times they did, but there's something not right. Well, they would think, like Klaus Schwab inviting Javier Milei to go speak at the World Economic Forum, that, well, if we could just entice them, we show them a nice room, we give them a good foot rub, we do whatever, they'll come over to the dark side. We get another stripe on our sleeve and get to be in the front seat of hell or something, okay, literally. So are you going, okay, why? Well, this is what all of a sudden I realized when it was explained to me. Episode of House had where they're doing a brain scan on somebody. They could see, you do images, they're trying to find out something. They could tell she was a sociopath. And what the hell does that mean? Your brain, you can tell? Because certain parts of your brain do not light up. You have little puppies, don't care. Strangle little puppies, drowning them, shooting them with a shotgun, but don't care. They just don't care. Because they are incapable of caring, empathy,
right,
love, compassion.
That's right. They don't have the gene for it.
So it could be manufactured. We're going to make a sociopath out of you and beat you over the head with whatever the hell at 3 years old, or biologically you're just that way. Well, where do these people that don't care and will do anything to get whatever the hell it is that they want, sex, money, power, whatever, they go beeline to government. And it is rife with these people. And I didn't understand that. I mean, I'm an actor. This is only like maybe 5 years ago that I'm going, whoa. Now everything makes sense of all of these government bureaucrats, politicians, whatever. I'm going, what was wrong with them? They are incapable, and oftentimes just choose not to, care. They don't care. There is no ethics. They don't care. So if we know that, well, one, there's special tests or, being in government or something, but whatever. The thing is that we need to recognize that. We get back to the philosophy of liberty thing. Where you understand the ethics of freedom, of self-ownership, those are the people that get a little seed planted to where they can tell right from wrong. All of the dystopian novels that were required reading for you and I are banned in the school library now. So I'm just like, this is so obvious to me what is going on and why, and the attack, and why you got so much attention on healing our world. Your books focused on this. I didn't know you were an ethicist or whatever that meant. So now you can see from my perspective why this is so important. It's a foundational thing. It's these young men and women have not even heard this stuff before in a simple TikTok way of I might give you 8 seconds. You got to go from 8 minutes to 8 seconds. Whatever. So this is why this is such an important project. Tell me and the audience to understand even how long the pathology for sociopathic behavior and diagnosis, how long have we even known that? When I was a kid, I remember they called, well, he has a criminal mind. He's got a criminal mind, whatever that meant. Well, he's got a criminal mind. This is what they were talking about. So expand on that. Take your 20 minutes and tell me everything.
Well, I'm not sure I have 20 minutes of knowledge to share with you, but the brain scans, of course, are fairly recent. The last 10, 20 years. We've had the equipment for about 20 years, I think. But our interpretation of it might only be a decade old. Again, I'm not an expert in this, but this is my impression. And I think maybe there are some people who come into Congress without being a sociopath, but they're few and far between, like Ron Paul, for example. And this is what has made, though, libertarianism so important. It is a truly ethical, moral principle. And I like ethical instead of moral. That's the current buzzword. And strangely enough, when I started calling myself an ethicist, there weren't many departments that actually had a program, university departments that had a program in getting you a degree in ethics. That was something that you kind of learned on your own. And if you were in the medical profession, there were formal ethicists that helped physicians, especially, make decisions about, like I said, transplants or triage, things like this. So it was more formal in the medical profession, which is probably why those tools of scans, brain scans, were used to interpret the psychology or the brain patterns of someone who was a narcissist and really didn't have empathy for others. There are people, for example, who are born without the ability to feel pain, and there are people who are born without the ability to understand the feelings and identify with the feelings that another person has. This allows these people to torture others or otherwise exploit them, which is very scary. And I think at the top of the food chain, yes, that is exactly what we have. And these people I think some of them think they're actually doing good. For example, Bill Gates thinks we have to cull the population, make it smaller, and we have to block the sun. He has a program to put particles in the atmosphere to block the sunlight. I mean, this is extremely dangerous. We know so little how to control climate, if it's even possible for us to control it. And to put something in the atmosphere that we can't take back and block the life-giving sunlight, even to some extent, even to a small extent. I mean, that's going to mean crop failure, less arable land, because it won't be in the temperature range where you need to have it for crops. And somehow they think this is all okay. So it's not just that they can't empathize with other people. There's another dimension, and that dimension is megalomania, in my opinion. They think they know best when they don't. And, if they don't understand something, if they don't have background, yeah. So it's not just that they can't empathize with others. It's that they have a belief that if they think there's a solution, that it's a solution, whether or not the data agrees with them.
Yeah, but they have a white paper. They are.
But they have what?
A white paper. Yeah, I wrote it down. Yeah, it must be true. I saw it on TV. This is well, this is one thing that you and our generation, had dealt with. It was always about, well, I saw it on TV. It was in the news. It was in the newspaper. Damn alt media, conspiracy, freaking nuts. The internet, throughout the 90s up until broadband hit, 2003, 4, around in there, libertarians dominated the internet. It was logic and reason, and you're just so freaking, messed up if you don't understand this basic principle of I got the philosophy of liberty video for you kind of thing. I'm glad you focus on the morality of it. An ethicist, right? It's really what is moral. Define that. Is that a religious term? Mm-hmm. Is it a human thing? Is it, when you say moral, what does that mean?
Well, I usually don't use that term. The only reason I mentioned it is because that's how the libertarian principles were described by Ayn Rand and the early objectivists and libertarians. They spoke in terms of morality, but morality does have that kind of religious connotation, which is why I prefer ethicist instead, ethics, because that's truly what it is. And ethics is what, and or morality, I guess if you want to say that, in my mind, is what makes humankind survive and thrive. In other words, the application of the libertarian principles are ethical because they help humankind survive and thrive. Whereas things like communism are just the opposite. And that's why they're unethical. So
this is one thing that I got helps. From her was she would say you're anti-life. If you were, for collectivism, whatever, you're anti-life. Yes. So she was pro-life.
Yes.
What she meant, pro-living, pro being alive, pro being left alone, pro being, having your liberty to sustain your life, pro, leave me alonist. And that was one thing that I got a lot from a lot of the interviews. I've done thousands of interviews. And what happened was, it was always the moral answer, question, whatever that drove a lot of people towards this. And you look at Ayn Rand understood that coming from Russia, that she's going, you got the cancer here in America, man. It is not going to go well. I give you Atlas Shrugged. When I first read Atlas Shrugged, because you have to, everybody libertarian make you. So you plow through that, which was entertaining. I enjoyed it. When you get through that book, you understand, beating you over the head with it, is the morality of self-ownership, leave me aloneism, and the productivity that comes from that. The reward, the acting in your own self-interest, this kind of stuff. Well, the push and pull of political influence and the kind of people they were, and she'd go to great lengths to detail their character and how scummy they, all these traits came from personal experience. So she went to the universities, she went into their psych department, she did screenplays, she was an activist, whatever her personal, what I don't care. But the point that she was making, it's a moral tale. It is a foundational, basic man. She didn't have a problem saying man or woman or whatever, is mankind, whatever, I don't give a crap. Mankind has a duty to themselves first and their family. But I can see that the only way to get freedom is to advocate it for everybody. And that the best way for me to live is to be rule one. This is rule one. You ready for rule one? Rule one. Don't be a dick, okay? That's rule one. So this is just, be nice, be a good neighbor, help them out, because it comes back. This is beaten out of everybody. The universities now, you're owed. You're owed because you're whatever, pick your thing. Yeah. And if you can't really be anything, be by. I mean, whatever, then you get your check. So this has to be countered. And now is a perfect time. Being at the universities, a kid in school and just retired. And he goes, yeah, over the 50 years, man, the people got dumber, They got less and less. By intent. This was the plan. This is that Marxist revolution kind of whatever. First you go after the family unit. It's a patriarchy. The state should be in charge. You're doing it wrong, and you need a, permission slip from the crown to do anything. So this is why out here we're in a desert. I got one neighbor within 5 miles. I mean, we're out in the desert. And what happens is, the man doesn't come out here because the man doesn't come out here. But sooner or later, they're going to come out here. They're going to get Ernie all over them, okay? We're going to have us some fun. But it's on this basic foundation of, are you free to not have to live under a bridge on the sidewalk where they pressure wash your hypodermics and crap off the sidewalk, and you're in a tent there, and it's illegal for you to, camp on your own land. I mean, come on. It's a moral thing. So this is where we're coming from, the direction. So I need your ethic argument I'm going to direct, what Mary says. Go read Mary's book. Go Mary, 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 Mary. Now, you said that you kind of glossed over it, and I didn't know this, that you're chairman of Liberty International. Well, I know what chairmen do. They do the work, okay? So tell me about your work and how many hours.
Say again? Yeah.
Well, chairmen do the work. Might as well just say chief operating officer or something, So, presidents and, whatever. So, chairman, what is your work like with Liberty International? How much time are you spending on it? What's your projects coming?
Well, of course, I'm an educator. That's really what I am. So a lot of the projects I'm engaged in Liberty International are educational. We had a lot of libertarian solutions courses where we tried to bring in a lot of people who knew a lot about the non-aggression principle. And we had people sometimes who didn't agree with the interpretation, but, they had different interpretations. So we wanted to present basically the entire NAP and its interpretation as much as we could. So we had several courses on libertarian solutions. And one of the newest things we've done is the mental and emotional freedom courses, because, you have to be free inside your own mind before you can really be free. And, we pick up conditioning from our parents. We pick it up from our peer group. We pick it up from our culture, and that includes, we pick up things from libertarian cultures too, the libertarian culture, and some of it is very helpful and some of it is not. So what we do is we try to help people identify what their conditioning is and correct it if they don't like it. And that's up to them, to decide what that is. And it's a fairly rudimentary course. We're trying to get a little deeper. To do that, we're having repetitions of the course and getting feedback to see the best way to help people, because this is not a concept that is normal in the libertarian culture. In other words, if you have feelings about something or emotions, oftentimes we're taught to discount it in the libertarian culture, but those feelings or emotions tell us what we really believe and what our conditioning is. And so that's one of the things we've gotten into. Also, we're trying out something new. We're trying to have a libertarian journal, similar to, some of the earlier journals that we had that went through the philosophy. And now this first issue we're going to try for is a longevity issue. It's a difficult undertaking. I'm not sure how well we'll do it, but we're going to give it a whirl. So that's another thing I'm doing. I also call
another thing you're doing, give what a whirl?
See how they're doing. Pardon me?
Yeah, give what a whirl? We're going to give that a whirl. I missed it.
Ask again. Yeah, I said I call donors and keep track of them and see how they're doing. Because our donor base is U.S. and so we had our annual meeting in Grapevine, Texas, a couple of years back, so that we could reconnect with all of our donors, because our donors are U.S. and the people that are coming to our courses and things are partly U.S. but in great detail are people in developing countries. And, you were referring earlier, Ernie, to what was going on in Russia and how people didn't understand private property. And that is the case for a lot of Africa, for example. And so what we're finding is we have to take special care when we're talking to people from Africa to really help them understand and embrace fully the libertarian ethics, because some of it is foreign to them, just like it was for the Russians.
Yeah, so decolonize your mind.
I spend most of my time. Yes. So this is what I focus my time and attention with Liberty International in. Now that Jacek Spindel has become president, I kind of waited about 10 years to hire somebody because I did not feel they would do the job. But when I met Jacek, I knew we had found the right person, and I have not been disappointed.
It's like with Donna and I, no matter what corporation I work for or own business, activism, whatever, you're really hiring the husband and wife team, and what's her name? Magda, I think. Magda's his wife. And, or Marta, I think it's Magda. But she was one of the students in the class that he was from Poland. And they got married and having babies. So I'm like, ooh, that's good. So when you get Jacek, you're getting, his personality and a lot of, he just turned 40. I'm like, you call him kid. I was a kid until I was 40. Everybody's telling you, kid. I go, oh, you ain't kid no more. You hit 40. You get to be Presidente. So it's really, you're hiring his family, or you got the family. So this is at such a perfect time. I've been through, Mary knows my history probably more than a lot of people, but it's always timing. For me, it's like, you keep doing what you're doing, you got in project and long-term, whatever, but you're looking for the opportunity to go do some whip ass on the bad guys. This is, and that's another thing I wanted to talk about. In the 90s, early 2000s and so on, when you would say, we did the Levolution thing, we had the Banksy guy throwing the bouquet of flowers and it said, we know the truth. Where did I get, it was the same thing that I got in the 90s from the libertarians. Evil? Well, it's subjective. Is there really evil? I mean, kind of, what's your term of it? Truth? What's truth? Not lies. And when I say freedom, good government, bad,
we're so busy fighting each other.
Yeah, it's bad guys doing bad things that they know are bad. I don't know. That's the definition of freaking evil. So I need, as an ethicist, explain to me, one, is there evil? What does it mean? How can it be put into context as a libertarian movement and this? I mean, focus on the word, evil a little bit and truth. Would you please?
Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of evil is just ignorance. People do horrible things when they're told to do it by an authority figure. There's been experiments on this, the Milgram experiments. I don't know if your audience is familiar with that, but after World War II, Stanley Milgram, did some psychological experiments. What he did is he brought in students, or basically anybody who wanted to sign up for his experiment. And what he told the people who signed up for his experiment was that they were educating a person in another room. And basically they had a list of things that they told this person and they had to repeat it back. And if they didn't repeat it back correctly, they were supposed to give this person an electric shock. This is what they were told. Now, the reality was the person in the other room was a Confederate of the investigator, and the electrical shock wasn't really there, although they gave the people who signed up for the experiment a very mild electrical shock, just so they believe that, electrical shocks were happening to the person in the other room. And
the person in the other room is from the drama department or something. They get them acting. Man, we want to, as it dials up, man, go for it.
Well, actually, it was just I don't think it was even a drama person. It was just another scientist. But anyhow, so what happened, the way this all came down is the learner kept missing the stuff. And so the people who had signed up for the experiment had to keep electrocuting at a higher and a higher juice, I guess you would say. And some of the people said, well, wait a minute, he's not responding anymore. Maybe he's dead in there. I mean, we need to go check. And the guy in the white coat, who was, the investigator, the running the experiment, said, no, you got to keep shocking him. And surprisingly, about 2/3 to 3/4 of the people that had been enrolled in the study continued shocking the person even after he said things like, oh, I've got a heart condition, I think I'm in trouble. They kept shocking him because the person in the white coat said, do it. So an authority figure, right? But if if the person didn't have a white coat, and he was just another Joe from the street, so to speak, then then they didn't shock as much. And
4 out of 5 doctors
there
say
were a few
kilo.
people. Yeah, so I mean, this is kind of what happened in Germany. In fact, I think there was one German lady who came in as part of the experiment, and she refused to shock the person after a certain amount of time because she said, no, this is what happened in Germany. We're not doing it. So a few people did, say no, but it was a very few number of people who did that. Now, these kind of experiments have been banned.
And yeah, that was another thing. They didn't want people to, do a lot of research in this area. And Davi Barker did a thing called authoritarian sociopathy that detailed a lot of these, in the prison experiment and so on, and to redo it. But
right, exactly.
One of the things that came later when they did it, you do a little history on this, is that if there was a person before them that wouldn't shock, the percentage of them not shocking went way up. And that's kind of the point that we're doing here. If you can infect society, the youth, with the idea of self-ownership, freedom, peace, rule one, don't be a dick kind of thing, you do that, it just explodes around. They have to immerse. Oh, all right. Well, I'm going to look something up I want to share with you. This is definitely down your alley, but let me write it down. Okay, I don't want to forget the idea of, I don't know, following the crowd, fear of missing out, doing all this stuff that they engineer us with social media to do whatever the hell they want us to do. And here comes TikTok. But the what do you think is the most powerful persuader? I'm looking for the secret sauce. I think this is where I'm going with this. But there was something better. We incorporate that too. What is it that you think makes a moral people? When America ceases to be good, it'll cease to be great, kind of thing. So what is it that is the most effective? Grandma? I mean, the TV, a government, a badge, a lab coat? I mean, what is the influence on the youth? Because you can't find a lot of the influences that we had as young people were dystopian, now trying to get us to read, I guess, or whatever. But to think, too, all of a sudden, now it's just, it's all, you find out that hip-hop and rap and everything from the late 80s and the crime culture and all that was orchestrated. I mean, it's by these same people. They need that. It's evil, okay? Go ahead and, what do you think are, over the years that you've done this, are the most effective things in a viral, widespread, even the libertarian movement has had a big impact. What do you think are some of all the things that you've done, what are some of the highlights for you?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's not one answer to that, Ernie, because there's several sources of influence. And in some cases, the better influence is very strong. I think for example, in my case, my influence was my mother and my father, the family basically, and also the Catholic education I had. I mean, I don't consider myself a Catholic now, but there were certain things in that dogma that resonated with me. And loving your neighbor, for example, when I heard about the libertarian philosophy, I went, oh, okay, this is the political expression of loving your neighbor. So it made perfect sense to me. Those were strong influences in my life, whereas my peer group was not a very strong influence. And that was basically because I had other influences. Now, some people, their parental influence is horrible because they're abused by their parents. That does not, give them a good place to go when they're thinking about freedom, because they haven't had freedom. They haven't had logic either. That's another thing. My parents, said question authority, even ours. So I'm used to questioning authority, but that's not true for most children. Most children are taught not to question authority. And I babysat for some kids in that that mindset. And it was horrible for me to see as a babysitter that the children were actually afraid of their parents, because the punishments were so severe. And that was really hard for me. So it just depends, but the normal influences are parents and family. The peer group is very strong for most people. It wasn't for me, but because I had other influences. Of course, if there is a religious type of influence, that can be strong. Logic is very important. I noticed when I went to the university, there was only one logic course left, which was really scary because, logic is sort of the part of the basis of a good scientific researcher, which of course I was aiming to be. So that is also important. Students are not taught logic anymore. They're not taught to see fallacies. They're not taught to use a rudimentary scientific method of looking at things in the life. And so they're very easily influenced, down a direction that they might not otherwise go. That's scary too. And of course, social media is another one. I don't get much influence by that because I really simply post libertarian memes and don't answer a lot much anymore because I found that most of the criticism I was getting was just designed to just nastiness, that really
You're
had no.
You're arguing with an AI. I'm telling you, a lot, or they're influenced by it, or something. It's just a waste of freaking time. Ernie, I Facebooked you. How come you? I go, well, that was your first problem right there. I don't read that. I don't care. This is where do you think this is going? Technology. Libertarians are always on the edge. Artificial intelligence going to help, or it's going to hinder. It's what I've been playing with Grok a lot. Mostly, on the land measurements, my inverter's messed up, how to repair, fix, do so it's really good for that. And Donna's like, oh, and well, you have a female voice. Why? That's what came with. I don't care. So is it going to be that's going to be a tool, or is it an enslavement? I mean, where are we going in the next decade technologically? You think for the freedom movement?
Well. Technology can be either. So let's talk about the enslavement issue though, because that's coming down the pike. So one of the big things is to do central bank digital currencies. In other words, that would do away with all cash. And a couple of years ago, I remember there was talk that Wells Fargo was going to convert all the deposits to central bank digital currencies. That did not happen. But the danger in that is that they're programmable. So, for example, if the climate people said, well, you can only spend X percent of your dollars on gas, or X percent of your dollars on food, or X percent on this, that, and the other thing, or X percent of the Libertarian Party, or maybe it's programmed so you can't donate to the Libertarian Party. That would be using the technology for enslavement, and that is coming down the pike.
Well, it's all over the world. It's like the United Kingdom's dealing with that. Canada's got done dealing with that. Exactly. It's not like it's going to happen. They're already doing it.
Yes, there are experiments going on in different countries to see how they'll react, to see, if it'll be accepted. And mostly here in the U.S., as far as I can tell, people aren't that concerned about it, but, they really should be. And of course, Windows 11 takes a snapshot of your screen every 3 seconds. So, it's spying on you. And that's why I've switched to Linux. I do still have a Windows 10 computer. Both of my machines are too old to take Windows 11. And this is one way that Bill Gates is going to make a ton of money, because people will have to turn in their old computers if they want to keep a Windows type format. And they're going to, have to buy a new computer. In fact, the public library that I sometimes check out books in, they were complaining to me about this, and I said, well, I'll send you a link where you can get updates for Windows 10 for at least another year for free. And, then maybe you can start thinking about changing to Linux. It's actually a lot more user-friendly than it used to be.
I'm a Linux guy.
And that I have.
Linux is a lot better.
Yeah, so.
I can't have
and
Windows to do the show because
it
updates all the time and screws everything up.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
this is what I wanted to share.
This is the kind of thing that's happening on the bad side.
Okay, this is one thing. Well, I got it up here. I wanted to share this with you.
Okay.
This really hit me kind of hard. This was like October before the election, and what it was is here. Let me share the screen with you. Yeah, I was trying to save on bandwidth. That's what was going on. Okay. Amaryllis Kennedy is RFK Jr.'s daughter-in-law. She was a CIA knock in UK. She married a CIA guy, had children. I guess they got divorced for whatever. And she marries RFK Jr.'s son, the third. Okay? So that's how she got involved with RFK Jr. and his campaign, and she was something. So right before the election, after RFK Jr. had joined the Trump ticket, whatever, she gave a fantastic interview. And blah, 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 this and that, and CIA does, and so on. And then it got down to what you and I have been talking about. What she was talking about is, and I even wrote on here, I go at an hour and 36 minutes. This is what happened. A very interesting DARPA weapon is outed by former CIA knock deep spy who happened to marry RFK Jr.'s oldest son, RFK III, and was RFK Jr.'s campaign manager. In recorded conversation with Tucker Carlson, the entire hour and 45 minutes has me plan to listen to it again, which I did while I'm, doing tractor. Well, what happened is this. At an hour and 36 minutes, I really encourage people to go watch this thing because she was talking about like kind of this Trump derangement syndrome and everybody she knew, I hate Trump, I don't know why, I just hate him and you're doing it wrong and you're not a Kennedy and you're not liberal enough of something, whatever, just because Facebook and TV told them to. So she's going, no amount of reason, no amount, even for RFK Jr. and his advocacies for not forcing hepatitis B vaccines on babies, all this kind of stuff, it was just what they, them, those had told them. She goes, it reminded me of a CIA project that was kind of along with the Milgram experiment kind of stuff. What they did, and it started during the Cold War, it's probably in the 70s or something at least, it's MK whatever the hell program. What they did is they had where agents would go train people that would go into, they call it Russia House or something, it was a bunker, that they were immersed in Russian dogma. You read only in Russian, you watched Russian commercials, television, movies, read books, magazines, newspapers. You were immersed in the Russian culture. In this bunker, you didn't go out, you're months there, okay, a year. When they would go to him and they say, all right, we're going to do this one thing, this one operation, this one, how impactful would this be? How effective would it be? They got their best intelligence that way. It was like remote viewing. I mean, they just, had them right there. They were immersed in the culture, and it's just like, they go, well, they got to be taught about property rights and taxes. I mean, they just didn't. So this was the only way that they could get a predictive model on what their activities and wars and actions and so on would have on the Russian culture. She goes, when they did that, they pull them out. They couldn't put them in the field. They went native. They're messed up in the head from then on. They go, do paperwork or something, So what they realized is that they could, from all vectors, all the media, all the TikToks, all the Instagrams, if they could immerse an entire generation into this kind of bombarding big government BS, identity politics, if I need, another entitlement, if you could do that, you could change the minds, the culture, the structure of an entire country. And they did. She goes, I recognize this. This is a tactic that they use to change minds. And I'm going, wow. Now, you and I knew in the 90s that we were up against something like this. Before everybody heard about Project Mockingbird and how, controlled the media was and all that, we didn't think we knew. I mean, we're like, really? Seriously? I mean, we knew. This was the incentives were set for them to do whatever the hell they were doing. They didn't have to change the reporter. They selected him from university newspapers, the biggest communist, to go be an editorial writer at the large whatever the hell. This was on purpose. And when she did this, told me, I go, the rest of the thing's pretty interesting too. But I went down, I'm like, whoa, that's what we've been up against, Mary. It's intent. It's intentional and on purpose. Mm-hmm. And this has been in their quiver, to take over the world. And especially, where do they target? America, because that's where the money is. Mm-hmm. Comment.
Well, it's also where the most resistance probably should be found, if you think about it. I mean, if anybody would figure out that this was happening, it would be the U.S. At least you would hope it would be, because the other countries don't have this history of freedom like we have. Theoretically, Britain does. I mean, that's where we got a lot of our ideas about freedom, but we went, I think, another step further. So if we go down, I think the world will be very discouraged. And that's why I was glad to see Javier Milei. I've always thought that with the internet, and this is another technology thing, the internet, this is the good part. It's out there how to make a poor country rich. It's very easy to see. You just have freedom and liberty and quit trying to run things via government. And, someday I figured there would be a developing country that would say, we're tired of being poor. We can read what's on the internet. We get it. We're going to have freedom and we're going to be wealthy. So I hope we don't go down, but if we do, the information's out there. And so I was, when Javier Milei took over in Argentina, I was very pleased. Now, of course, Argentina does have a history of being prosperous and being relatively free. So maybe that's not so unusual. But unfortunately, what I'm finding working with the African nations is that history, if it's there, is so long ago that the institutional memory isn't there. So, that's going to be very difficult for countries in that region to be the developing countries that decide they're going to be rich. But the longer that we can keep the internet free and open and uncensored, the better chance we have of establishing freedom somewhere and not having it extinguished. Unfortunately, I think Americans are we've been too complacent for too long. We've thought, gee, we have the best government in the world. That might have been true 100 years ago, when the government was small, because that's what made it good. It couldn't do much harm. But now that's changed. Now we are the biggest government in the world, pretty much, with the biggest weapons. So much so we feel quite happy going into other countries and assassinating their leaders or taking over their countries, sponsoring regime change. And it's really scary to me because, there's something called karma, and it doesn't have to be a religious principle. It's just the way the world works. It's cause and effect. So I tremble for my country when I think about what we've been doing. And that's why I really, really hope the other countries will pick up.
I apologize. We got a delay, so it makes it difficult. But
that's okay.
One of the things that I wanted to make sure that we understand is what we're up against, and a lot of the different methods. There's no central plan for freedom, so I'm not trying to, this is what you need to do kind of thing. But you need to do something. But biggest thing is, stop empowering the beast that's devouring you. Stop, delegating authority to someone to fix it for you. They're not going to fix it for you. They're going to fix it for them. And this is, especially with children, you go, here, Uncle Sam, raise my kid for me, and I'll check back in 18 years, no, 22 years, and they'll be, I don't know, have their penis cut off. So I'm just going, it's so bad. Now, there was a lot of activism, a lot of foundational stuff, and we were heavily influenced by L. Neil Smith. L. Neil Smith was a libertarian science fiction writer, whatever, I'm sure you're familiar with. And
Right.
so he had a bunch of sayings, and we put those in an article, and it's a long story how this happened, but Freedom Activism 101, and these are a lot of this thing. The things that, what you said made me think of this, and then these two here are what really helps me understand the best way to go after these guys. One, it goes, understand from the minute the fight begins that you're going to take damage. Accept it. You'll always suffer more from the idiots and cowards on your own side rather than from any enemy. Keep your overall goal in mind above all. Those who swerve to avoid a few cuts and bruises defeat themselves. That was the Libertarian Party. And what he was saying, he goes, those Nerf libertarians with their foam core platform, or what he was advocating for was a much harder approach, So this is, kind of where I'm going.
Yeah.
Everybody's worried about what the media is going to say thing. Then this is my favorite here. If you're not at least a little bit uncomfortable with your position, it isn't radical enough. How can you be too principled? Take the most extreme position you can. You're claiming territory you won't have to fight for later, mostly against your allies. So we would be so hardcore. Yeah, every infant gets their AK-47 issued to them at birth, whatever. I mean, that kind of thing. And then you argue the morality of it. This is, so that kind of thing. Then it goes, this one. You were talking about going after, where their strengths are. Go straight to the heart of the enemy's greatest strength. Break that, and you break them. You can always mop up the flanks and stragglers later, and they may even surrender, saving you a lot of effort. So that was one thing that we did. We looked for the big bad guy. We're going, we're going to get some, because we knew we were going to win the moral argument. Freedom's the answer. This is why we're doing this, Mary, and why you're so important in this. Tell us about Healing Our World. That is something that you've focused on, the impact of that. It's been an issue forever since you wrote it. Well, Mary said, blah, 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 blah. But it has been effective. Like Jonathan Gullible from Ken Schoolin. You have these Ayn Rand books. I mean, there are some of these books, Human Action. You got, Hayek, Heinlein, science fiction. You got, Lysander Spooner and Rothbard. I mean, you can count Mises. You can count on, your two hands how many books that, different variations of the theme that you get learnified. Why did you write Healing Our World? What was your goal? What was the impact? What's its impact continuing now?
Well, the reason I wrote Healing Our World is I have to use a kind of religious term because I can't think of any other one to use. I had what felt like a revelation. What I saw, and I say saw, that's not quite true either. It wasn't exactly in English even. So what happened for me is the idea of libertarianism as the political equivalent of loving your neighbor, and the practicality of liberty in giving us universal harmony and abundance, and some of the New Age stuff that was happening around the time that I wrote the book, which was the late 80s, early 90s. Just the literature that I was running into on libertarian authors that were writing like papers on restitution, or one that really spoke to me was The Wild Wild West, Terry Anderson and PJ, forgetting his last name now. Anyhow, that was published in the Journal of Libertarian Studies. Anyhow, that all came together. It got integrated in my head in a way that I hadn't seen anywhere else. So first I made a little video thinking maybe I could put this all together in a video. That did not work. This was bigger than a video. So then I started writing Healing Our World. I actually had a conversation with my sister Marty. We were very close. You know, I'm the oldest of 6. She's the second oldest. And I couldn't even really articulate where I was going with Healing Our World because, like I said, it wasn't in English exactly, but we were close enough that she got exactly where I was going. So I started writing it. It took 5 years to write it. And I kept sending her, she was in California, I was in Michigan. I kept sending her all the drafts and she'd send it back with a lot of red ink, which was good because I didn't want it to sound like a scientific treatise. I wanted it to sound, you know, user-friendly and conversational. And I wanted to speak to, I wanted to speak to issues that, well, was a lot of liberal stuff like environment and poverty, you know, which we really didn't discuss well at that point in time in the libertarian movement. And so, and I had experience with tenants that, because I had a family business with real estate. We were kind of trying to flip apartment buildings before it was a thing. Anyhow, we had a lot of welfare recipients. And because of that, I learned a lot about the system and how it really creates poverty. So I had this knowledge base that was all integrating. And so I started writing this book. As I wrote it, it was like more and more studies just kind of fell in my lap. I have a lot of sidebars in Healing Our World. Those fell in my lap. It was almost like Marty and I were being guided to put this thing together in a way that it hadn't been put together before. So I'd like to think of it as, you know, having a clearer picture of our libertarian philosophy and its results in the real world, and addressing issues that libertarians of that time were not addressing. Like I said, poverty, environment, crime, things like this. So when I first put it out, one of the earliest criticisms I got was it was too airy-fairy. And of course, I asked the gentleman who said that what he meant by that. And he said, well, I don't know. I really haven't read the book, but this is what my fellow libertarians are saying about it. So, you know, which is really un-libertarian if you think about it, right? We're supposed to make our own decisions, do our own research, but
you know, let's talk about that one. The mindset of libertarians are generally what? I mean, it was, I remember when I first, this is what happened. In the late 80s, my father, you know, manufactured a camping trailer for touring motorcycles. I came across the Omnibus Trade Competitiveness Act of 88, and before I even heard the term New World Order at 28, I'm going, what the hell is this? You know, I remember this in junior high. The definition of fascism was when, you know, government and business get so mixed you can't tell the difference. This is definitely that, you know. Yeah. And it sent me down this path. And I, you know, started questioning. I go to Washington. I met with the governor. I just wanted the answer to the question. I just wanted to have the information for what the trade duty was and what European country, because my dad was getting a bunch of orders. And I go, well, maybe you want to go in Portugal instead of Italy, and the tariffs are better, whatever. And no, you got to pay $1 gazillion to get access to this government data that we're charging for, and we love you. And I'm like, what? You guys? Oh, this is bullshit. So that's what sent me down the road. It wasn't until I go, well, how do they get away with this? It was election law. anybody that had an alternative, I never even heard the word libertarian, but anybody that had an alternative, this is kind of sucks. Boom, you're not allowed, you can't vote, you can't get on the back, whatever. And I'm going, man, this is where the core is. How they're getting away with all the stuff that they're doing is the government is full of these people that are doing this. So when I started, I met Gary Fallon, good friend here. That was my first libertarian. And he goes, we're having the Libertarian Convention. I remember it was about a year before. It was when Andre Maru was running in 92, okay? So so during that time, I go to the convention. I was a luncheon speaker on, how I navigated the pride, and I had lawsuits and challenged 44 election laws all the way to the Ninth Circuit and had me some fun. So this was how I got started. Libertarianism was a moral answer to my questions. How the hell are they? Who lets this get away? Because they can. And they're going to do it until they cannot.
Right.
It's that simple. And when I go to the libertarian here, we had, you remember our advocacy in Arizona, we were hardcore and, L. Neil Smith types. But nationally, it was totally different. They were like, well, you got to go along, don't be so crazy and talking about whatever. Because they were in reaction to the media hammering on drugs, guns, no taxes, fully informed jury, all these things, gay, because libertarians don't give a crap. Like the Ron Paul Revolution, you got every race, ethnicity, orientation of age. What it didn't matter. That's what they were trying to stop. They didn't want us coming together under the idea of freedom. So the Levolution blindsided them. When that happened, that logo came from a campaign in 06 that I had. And I go, watch this. This was January. We found out Ron Paul was even thinking of doing it. And I go, is this for real? We're going to, if we can. I go, it's for real? I ain't playing politics. I'm not walking precincts. I don't give a crap about vote totals. I'm going to see how long I can keep them on that podium. And we got to do it twice. So we go ahead and do that. The problem with the Libertarian Party was they were so controlled by other people's perception. They would go in and they'd say, oh, you have, and then of course, what did they highlight? The media always you have some big protest. They look for that one guy in the floppy camo hat, from Vietnam or something, and go interview him. They want to find, you want heroin for, state children or whatever. You want to have, we got to go after the guy that has the child pornography tape, and that's evidence of a crime. Go get the criminals. That's it. That's all you're going to do is confiscate or put in jail, whatever. When they're actually raping children and you're not doing it, you guys suck. So this whole thing, they would go after the fringe, and that's what Healing Our World did. It was addressing all these issues from a freedom, ethical, moral standpoint of self-ownership, and this is why the philosophy of liberty akin schooling just distills that down into a very short, itty-bitty little, and it's translated into 40 whatever languages. It's already there.
Actually, over 50 now. Over 50 now. That's, and Healing Our World addressed a different population. I really thought that the average person who wanted to see wonderful things happen in our country would be embracing it. I didn't expect the libertarians actually to embrace it, but a lot of them did as kind of the next step in the evolution of our philosophy. It really opened up some other doors that we hadn't talked about, because mostly what was happening, people would talk about economics. Or they would talk about, not stepping on, don't leave me alone, or don't tread on me. But this actually, the Healing Our World addressed you could call it the softer side of libertarianism, although I think it's actually a major factor of a major result of our philosophy is that it does, it does end poverty. It does.
It's a book you give to your liberal
less...
college student. That's what it is.
Exactly, and that's where most of it has gotten conversions, if you will. And also, a lot of people are so in love with Healing Our World, they bought multiple copies. I mean, one Texan just bought 200 copies of Healing Our World and gave them to the Texas legislatures. And I saw him just a few nights ago, and he said, yes, it was very well received. They thanked me for the book. Like, it was a big surprise. So, so that was really good.
Well, that's a good example
I wouldn't...
of activism using your book. In '94, we did, I don't know if you remember the book by John Ross called Unintended Consequences. It came out right after Waco, and it was all about, gun culture and whatever, the BATF sucks, that kind of thing. Well, we bought 50 of, God, it was 90 of those books, because there's 30 senators, 60 House representatives, and we gave every one of them a copy of that book. Are they going to read it? Don't care. That wasn't the point. It was just active, bite me kind of thing. But that is the power of these books. When you send, here's the information. Here's our perspective. This is what we're fighting. That's exactly what they're going after. And especially when you have a book like yours, or, just kind of almost a kid fantasy, very clear, simple, Jonathan Gullible, Philosophy of Liberty video, your books and so on. That is Liberty International. Yeah, man, we got to do something about that. Is there a special CIA virus we can give them, or microwave brain thing, fog, vaccine, something? I mean, there's got to be, because what do you think I call them, there are those that just want to be left alone. There are those that just won't leave them alone. Who are they? They, them, those. They're the ones that won't leave me alone. Who are the bad guys? The ones that won't leave me alone. That's how my audience, I was like, T3, man. They, them, those, okay? So this is, it is, do you think T3 is targeting what? And what is the best, or one of the mechanisms by diminishing their effectiveness? Well, I'm, one, be a good example, don't be a dick, and non-aggression principles, some basic fundamental stuff, and understanding what you and Ken have done. And they're both at Liberty International now. Ooh, man. And then here comes Ernie, man. We're going to get some. So this is, and people like Corbett, and a lot of that. But what role could the Libertarian Party play? How active are you in the Libertarian Party? Are they effective? Are they a tool now? Or they're just a tool? I mean, what's going on there?
Well, I think we're seeing a big change right now. At least I hope so. What has happened is the party has kind of imploded. And basically bringing in candidates that aren't truly libertarian has finally, I think, paid its toll. I mean, we deviated from our principles. I gave the example earlier of how we actually had a fight over whether we should remain the party of principle as we grow. Come on, that's like a basic thing. So what's happened is the people who want to win at any cost, of course, then start, the end justifies the means, that whole thing. And there is no way to really win because, well, what happened here in Texas, as soon as we started running lots of candidates and keeping our ballot access because we got enough votes, they started levying these huge filing fees on candidates. Now, the Republicans and Democrats, they can handle that. But, our campaigns don't raise that much money. We spend most of it on ballot access. So, we can't run as many candidates. And they're always the Democrats and Republicans are always going to keep us off the ballot as much as they can because we ruined their gravy train. I mean, they're profiting from all of this graft, right? Not maybe everybody that's in Congress, but I would say most. Yeah. So they're not
and
going
USAID
to
stuff, that was just tip of the iceberg.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, like I said, the LP kind of imploded. And there might have been some malfeasance in the handling of funds. I don't know, because I wasn't that closely involved the last few years, because basically I saw the writing on the wall and, gave my time to Liberty International. Now, there is a group of people trying to rebuild the Libertarian Party. And I gave a talk in Dallas this weekend. I will give essentially the same talk at the Texas Party Convention in April, and possibly at the National Convention in Grand Rapids Memorial Day weekend of next year. And basically the message is this: we have to educate the people who come into the party, because, they want to open the tent. Well, nothing's wrong with opening the tent as long as you're educating the people who come in and making sure that the candidates are held to a higher standard, because that's what people see about us. They don't really see the rank and file, they see our candidates. So we have to get back to the place where our candidates mostly are saying the same thing. I mean, when I was campaigning before, in the early days, the early 80s, I was able to say most of the libertarian candidates are going to be saying 80% of the same thing, 80, 90%, because we're in agreement on most things. Now, that's maybe not as true today, but the thing is, we need that consistency with the NAP. And that's why I say we need education. And that was one of the things, the same people who didn't want to, have stay the party of principle as we grew, are the same people that did not want to have any education of our rank and file and our candidates. They said, oh, let the nonprofits do that, but they didn't bring in the nonprofits to do it. So nothing happened.
Okay,
and so
my
observation was that many of the candidates were running. Yeah, the candidates weren't, I don't even know if they knew what the NAP was, frankly. So that's when I kind of bowed out.
Well, this was the act of it. Our thing, Arizona, we were on this very issue. We were seeing the erosion of the principles behind it, and we just, got tons of media for being hardcore. Ooh, icky. You're publicly spouting all that libertarian stuff that we are supposed to believe. I mean, that kind of crap. So it was. I ran for national chair a few times just to give voice to this point. I go, This is going to go bad. When you, the last time I ran for chair, I think, was in Denver 08. You were running for the presidential nomination, and it was obviously popular Mary Ruwart. Well, it was Wayne Allen Root combined with Bob Barr for them to be a ticket, because we can't have, that libertarian Mary. Okay, that's what was going on. And they would change. We saw it happen in 06. They changed the platform for the candidate because they wanted to get more attention. Not the candidate had to conform to the principles and the platform and what libertarians voted in convention and all that. They would stack. It was politics, just like every other thing. So that's the question I want to ask. Was it intentional? Did it come from outside? Because I made the statements. I go, for $10,000 at the right time, and certainly $100,000, you could buy the party. And that's what happened, in my opinion. What's your opinion?
Yeah, the ballot access. Yeah. I think the people, there was a group of people in the party, the same people that you were, trying to point to and say, hey, this isn't working, are the same people who didn't want to remain the party of principles we grow, the same people that brought in Republican candidates for our presidential candidate that didn't necessarily toe the libertarian line. And, one of them, Gary Johnson, got 3% of the vote, but it didn't make any difference. The media didn't report it. And what does that mean? So they get a few more votes. That's not the idea. The idea is having our ideas, our principles elected, not us, and that's where we lost it, because there is no way for us to elect enough libertarians to change things in a timely fashion. If that could have been done, Ron Paul would have changed a bunch of stuff. But he couldn't, because this is a majority rule system. So,
this is one thing that the Libertarian Party tried to protect itself. When it first started, it was Carl Hess was the speechwriter for Goldwater, and he had a big impact on leave me aloneism, activism stuff. And the party started in 71, 72. They were in the first. Matter of fact, it was a woman that got the VP candidate for LP in their first year, got an electoral vote. Just got ha 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 ha.
Yeah.
So they don't want to have that anymore. Mm-hmm. Who's this Ron Paul thing? We don't have to ignore them. But the when you think of libertarian, a lot of times
at the last minute.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I was saying, they didn't want Ron Paul. That's why they changed the rules for the nomination of the Republican presidential candidate at the last minute. He had won, I think he won 5 primaries. They changed it to 8 or something like that after all the primaries were over.
He won delegates for Las Vegas.
That.
They knew it. They shut it out. They turned the lights off. They had to have some dentist remember filed suit. They had all the ballots and everything in the safe deposit box at the hotel resort that they were at. They pull them out. Yep, Ron Paul won. Yep, too late now. I mean, this is just how the crap works. So I'm just when we talk about the statement of principles, the reason I was bringing up Hess and so on was Carl Hess was kind of a radical, had a beard, kind of looked Castlery. He wear kind of uniformy kind of, thing. They're going, oh, libertarians, they're, militant of something. So when they create the party, and David Nolan, moved to Arizona here, we got to meet him quite a bit, and he spoke at our freedom summits and so on, as you have and such. So what happened was, they wanted to have a clarity of what we were about. What the Libertarian Party is. So they have the statement of principles. This first paragraph, the first sentence, this first phrase, it's been a campaign by somebody or something to get rid of this. And it was my favorite part.
Yes.
Hell, I ran for national chair just to tell you it was my favorite part. And this is it. Let's go ahead and pull it up here and you'll see what I mean. The Libertarian Party statement of principles. We, the members of the Libertarian Party, challenge the cult of the omnipotent state and defends the rights of the individual. Now, of course, they go, ooh, culty and omnipotent state. And I'm going, well, look up the definition of the words. Cult means the adoration, the worship of whatever. And then omnipotent state, it's all-powerful, all-knowing state. So what are we against? We're challenging this worshiping of an all-powerful state. They go, and this was the argument. Yeah, but that'll prevent a lot of people from joining. Yeah, that was the point. All these people were trying to not come. That's a need not apply sign. Are you freaking kidding me? So once you can see this ingrained. I know whatever your opinion was and so on, but that was mine. I'm going to run for national. This is my platform, is this. Because you guys are freaking pissing me off. So this is what I've seen happen in the darkest days. Well, he's still getting dark. I don't even pay attention anymore. Was Bill Barr, or Bob Barr. Bob Barr was congressman but he was willing to run as a libertarian, so they bent over backwards for him to be able to get nomination. And Wayne Allen Root just, wanted to pick me. And there was no principle. There was no support of this. We're challenging this adoration, this worship of an all-powerful state. Who else is doing that? So I'm just real. This is what I hope to change. I want to make sure that people embrace this kind of rhetoric. That freedom's the answer. What's the question? Everything that I've always done. How many minds can we free? It's how I knew the revolution was going to take off. It's how I knew John Buttrick, running for governor here in Arizona was going to go. Because the Levolution was just a segue from him. You know, we had already done it in Arizona. I knew it was going to happen, you know. So this has been, it is a moral, ethical thing, healing our world. Mary Ruwart.
That's right.
Your comments.
It is all about ethics. It is about morality, whichever word, appeals to the people listening. And I hope a lot of people hear this. This is what we don't have in politics today. I mean, all we hear about is how, people are doing dirty tricks to get one person out of office, and then the other party is doing dirty tricks to counter that. And I mean, no one is speaking up for the ethical solutions that bring us the harmony and abundance that we all want. And that's because they're not practicing they're not practicing in an ethical way. Our government is, unfortunately, if it ever was, is no longer ethical.
If it ever was, you're killing me. It was never.
Was,
government
yeah,
itself is, that's the whole point. As I get older and we do a lot of these shows and so on and talk to people, I could see, certainly for the times, this idea that people should govern themselves. I say down to the individual, but if you're going to create a government, it's like inside these borders, we're for freedom, and all enemies, foreign and domestic, thou shalt not abuse our people. That's for us to do, So I'm like, okay, well, whatever, But if you could change that, then it would be, a thing, But they make it to where you can't. So we get dominated by everywhere, even on our borders. You protest a trucker convoy, the COVID kind of stuff, and whatever. Yeah, boom, we're taking all your money, and you can't donate, and you're not allowed, and whatever. So this and what's going on in the UK, and it's just so horrendous. Where's the light? I don't know. Trump?
Yeah,
he's a side effect.
No, I don't think Trump is the answer at all. But here's the thing. Who would have ever predicted that the colonies would have won the American Revolution? Nobody. They went up against the biggest, baddest army that there was in the world. And they didn't play by the rules. You're supposed to stand in a line and get shot at. Well, they didn't do that. They hid behind the trees and did guerrilla warfare, just like the Indians had done. Yeah, but there wouldn't have been a win without it. But no one would have predicted that. And I'm saying these discontinuities are part of history. And my hope is that we have a discontinuity that allows us to really have a serious libertarian state of some sort. Maybe state is the wrong word, because that implies government, but a libertarian state of mind, and that's, of course, the beginning of the libertarian ethic. You have to have a libertarian state of mind. If you're somebody who wants to control other people, you're never going to adopt the libertarian ethic, because you want to control people. And it's okay. You feel it's okay to do so at gunpoint if necessary, because you know best, right? You're a megalomaniac. It's for their own good, right?
I don't need government for my own good. I'm good it up. I'm done.
No, of course not. Of course not. Nobody does. I mean, even though I learned about libertarianism through objectivism and Ayn Rand, I was turned on to those things by anarchists. So I quickly got the ideas of anarchy instead of the ideas of limited government. And that's where I still land. And healing our world actually takes you step by step through everything the government does and shows that not necessary. I never say anything about anarchy or no government in Healing Our World, but by the time you're done reading it, that's kind of what you conclude naturally, I think.
Right.
So
give me the future before you go. I want to make sure. God, how long has it been? Yeah, it's almost 2 hours. I want to go ahead and get the idea of what the future holds. When it's always darkest for the dawn kind of thing. In fact, it is that was the whole concept of Freedom's Phoenix. From the ashes of Lady Liberty's torch, freedom's rebirth, freedom's phoenix. So this is, what we anticipate, but what do you got to go through? The ashes, okay? And I tell you what it triggered for me. All right, here we go. How much silver can I buy? I mean, that kind of thing. It was in October of 19, right before the COVID thing happened. A friend of mine and I, Bob Anderson, you may remember him. We went to Massachusetts on a trip. We were doing something. We go there. With the North Bridge and all that stuff, by the way, and the park ranger. She's like, well, they were breaking the law, and kind of, but I guess they prevailed. So what happened was, we went and saw the movie Joker with Joaquin Phoenix. We come out of that and go, what the crap was that? That was programming. They're going to, something fire in the streets of we're rioting of what, and then Portland happened that summer, and I'm going, this was like predictive programming. This was, this is okay. This is how, I go, it's on. And here we go. All the identity politics, all the economic stuff, and it's going to turn into a food thing. This is going to be, people are going to be without, they can't afford to whatever. They can't afford, hell, it's not even going to be on the shelves. COVID happens. When we were driving from Maine, we were doing the Love Bus, building it out, and we drove it back to Arizona right after they shut everything down in like the 20th or so of March. Now, remember, I was rushing back on a plane to make Donna's birthday. So we go back, get the bus, drove it back across the country. It was us and a smattering of 18-wheeler truckers. It was shut down. You go through rush hour, in St. Louis or whatever, no car. I'm like, what the crap? This is like a sci-fi dystopian movie. And if it worked once, we can do it again. And this great reset of whatever they're talking about, it's planned, it's engineered, and we are being programmed to expect it, accept it. But I see from books like yours, the creation of this philosophy around a party, which I don't care, but vehicles and organizations like Liberty International to be able to a roadmap to peace and prosperity for people to just abandon the idea of you owe $38 trillion and, everybody's got, $100,000 you owe and you got it on you, and pass it on to your grandkids. So I'm just going, there is something about ready to break, and it's worldwide. This is not just America. It's going to happen. I guarantee it. What tools do we have to try and, when we come out of the ashes, Freedom's Phoenix, what's the philosophy? What's the mechanism? What's the advocacy? Who are the people doing it? How many does it take? The American Revolution was only supported by a few percent. And that's one reason why they freak when a libertarian candidate hits 15% in the polls and so on. Man, I got targeted big time. You hit 15%? I don't know what the hell secret number that is, but they freak. And I'm going, whoa, damn. And when I ran against McCain in 2004, everybody wanted me to speak at the Libertarian Convention, the state convention, so they go, well, how did you get so and you did and what and why and how did I go? I told people to stop voting. Never mind, we don't want you to come speak. Because people want the truth. This is kind of a prelude for you to give your perspective on the future, what's going to happen, by whom, and what, as us old libertarian activists that been there know that, got a bunch of T-shirts. Hell, I got $100,000 hoodies, from Bitcoin in my closet. So the thing is, what do you think's going to happen?
Well, I don't know, but I think that there's going to be a discontinuity, like I was talking about earlier. I'm hoping that it happens in the US and that we're successful in rolling back government. But if we are not, I really think that another country is going to step forward, probably a poor country that wants to, have abundance for their people. And I think they will try to implement the libertarian ethic. Unfortunately, what they will be, if the US goes down, what they will be up against is a very powerful world government. And we'll just have to see. But, a lot of people woke up during COVID. It wouldn't surprise me if those people, one more round of something even remotely similar.
Right.
And I think there will be a revolution here. It may not be one with guns, but it will happen at the polls. And I think that's why Trump got elected. I think that was the beginning of a revolution, because states that normally would have voted for Democrats did not vote Democratic. I mean, Trump had a big victory. Now, is he coming through with everything he promised? The answer is no. And he's doing things that weren't talked about but shouldn't be happening. But the fact that the election went the way it did makes me think that there is a fervence for independence here. And actually, I don't know if you followed this, Ernie, but 5 of the Canadian provinces are making noises like they want to secede from Canada. They are the ones that have the opportunity to produce oil or have already have trade relations with the U.S. and the ones that basically Ottawa is taking money from. They're bleeding them dry and they're sick of it. Right. So things have
British
changed.
Columbia,
and
Alberta,
like here in Texas, they're talking about exiting. Yeah.
This is one thing that L. Neil Smith made a big deal. You might remember we had our Western Libertarian Alliance. You remember that? We were doing all that stuff.
Yes, yes.
Whatever. The Western Libertarian Alliance was a concept that L. Neil Smith, we just did it just, because we're active, just being ornery. But it was a concept. He's going, look, it's going to be the Rocky Mountain states. One, you can, anything east of the Mississippi, done. Anything on the coast in the west, done. It's going to be the Rocky Mountain states. It's going to go from Western Canada down through, Idaho and, Utah and Arizona and northern part of Mexico, Sonora and so on. It's going to be the Western Libertarian Alliance. And it was just a conceptual thing. As time goes on, you start to see, a decade or so ago, the Russians were coming out going, America's going to implode. They're going to break up in the regional kind of what exactly the rhetoric that's going on now, where you have Northern California wants to align themselves with Western whatever, and kind of I break with thee, and you throw dog poop on their shoes, and then you go to the Freedom Place. So this is how it's going to happen psychologically. Up
Possibly.
Here, it's
well,
a decision.
Remember too, Texas. Yeah. And Texas in its constitution has the right to secede. Of course, I don't know that the federal government acknowledges that, but there is a big movement here for Texas to secede from the Union as well. And if that should happen, I believe it would bring some other states along.
Yep. That's why they call it the Lone Star State, Texas Republic. When they became a state, I lived in Texas. I went to college. Just community college while I was traveling after, long story. I was like a year and a half in Texas. Just to keep my mind entertained and, learn some stuff, I went to community college there. When you do that, if you're not from Texas, you have to take Texas government and history or you're not allowed, okay? All right, fine. So I do that. It was amazing. Texas can secede whenever they want. And they can break up into 5 states, so they get 10 senators. So they go, and then that's why Texas has its own internal utility grid. It doesn't, kind of go out as much, not part of the national whatever. All this stuff is why they, and like the Texas flag can't be lower than the American flag. I mean, that kind of crap. So they are definitely Texas. We go whip your ass. We from Texas, man, them fighting words kind of thing. So if Texas goes, and when you had this one series that was about, that's a long story. It's called Jericho. And it was about a atomic attack on the U.S. And it was always, there's Texas. I mean, this is such a thing, and I see it keep cropping up. And that's where the Hunt brothers, when they went all the big run up in silver back in the late 70s, 80s, was one of the things they were trying to create a currency for Texas. Now you got, crypto, one guy we know, Rob Gray, that's doing Texas crypto, and it's all, I mean, so this is, I think he's just playing on that. But, the thing is that it's, he's going to be sponsoring out in Acapulco this coming year. I mean, he was there at Ron Paul's birthday. He sponsored us going. Wanted to make sure we went. This is happening, and it's always Texas. And it's the right people that are moving to Texas, the ones that are escaping to Texas, to Arizona, by the way, too. So it's happening right, not later, and most people don't know it. They don't see it. They don't understand it. They don't believe it. Well, Mary and I, and many of us, we have been anticipating, prepping for, expecting Freedom's Phoenix. Here it comes, and Liberty International has contacts. They have the youth. They have the spread. They have the depth internationally. The entire world. And the actor, because you don't got to convince everybody, that tireless minority willing to start brush fires in the minds of men is going to do some whip ass. Before you go, I want to give you an opportunity to sum up everything and what your plans are and where you guys are going with this. And yeah, the philosophy of liberty thing, I mean, that's got you guys written all over it, so hopefully you'll support that. But it doesn't matter. This is not a centralized thing. It's going to be, you can't delete it, you can't deplatform it. It's on interplanetary file sharing that we've, made use of, and they can't, I'm so sick of getting everything deplatformed, deleted all the time with good stuff like this. And we're going to do some whip ass, and I guarantee Healing Our World is going to be part of it. That's just because you need to give it to your liberal friend and shut them up. That's one thing. Donna, order the latest version of at least a couple of copies of Healing Our World, because Deb needs it. My sister-in-law, her brother, is a economist on Wall Street, with Moody's, whatever. And but he knows. But at home, living in New York, he's got 3 boys, pretty cool. One of them's kind of, that, and their mother, my sister-in-law, great woman. But yeah, you're freedom libertarian. Ew, icky. I give her Healing Our World, get her commit to read something. What chapter would you suggest that someone that's a diehard, leftist, liberal, whatever, that and was in the media, by the way, needs to read? What would send her on the right path right away? What chapter?
Yeah, probably the one on poverty. Let's see. Let me grab my copy so I give you the right chapters. Oh. Yeah, it's the ones in the center, basically. It's, I'd say probably chapter 11 is on welfare. So, that shows that doesn't work. Now, chapter 12 is sort of a summary of the chapters that came before and shows how poverty can be eliminated, really, with the libertarian ethic. And then if she's, if that hooks her, she'll probably read the rest.
Yeah, I need a hook.
But, you can actually read, actually the chapters are named in such a way that hopefully, and then there's a little blurb for each chapter, like a 2-line blurb that tells what it's about. So she can actually browse the table of contents and figure out,
But what's
you know,
your experience?
what she
Is
wants
it
to read.
painful? Is it painful for these people that are, in like, one of my nephews, he's just it's down the I mean, there's no logic. It's like what Amaryllis was saying. There's no logic or reason that you can do. You can't show them. There's no proof that's going to. They believe what they believe, and they want to believe in their tribe of belief. And no matter what you do, and I'm wondering what the issue would be. I go, it's going to be a food thing. She was asking, they're coming to visit for Christmas, all the family here, and we had planned on planting first this spring, as we're developing the land and so on. We didn't plan on doing it now, but you can grow, the only time you can't grow in Arizona is like July and August, But what we do is we went ahead and I said, yeah, we need to plant for what's coming. What do you think's coming, Ernie? What do you think's coming? What are you so afraid of? And I'm going, food. It's going to be a food thing, whatever it is. It's going to, So it's I don't want to be proven right. It's going to be Dion, I told you so.
Sure.
I mean, that doesn't give me any benefit, So I'm wanting to, and when the '08 crash happened, '08, '09, my economist brother-in-law, he's like saying that all the brokers, investors, and everything on Wall Street were reading Atlas Shrugged to understand what was going on. It became, a big bestseller again. And I'm thinking your book is going to have the same kind of resurrection because it's a moral question. And that's going to, and one of the, leads into that is Philosophy of Liberty, Jonathan Gullible, Healing Our World. But it didn't even occur to me until Ken Schoolin, the author of the book, was talking about the Libertarian. He mentioned Libertarian Party or something, and I'm going, wow, it's interesting that this freedom libertarian philosophical thing didn't even occur to me to talk to the Libertarian Party. Didn't even think of it. I mean, isn't that interesting? Do you think who would you talk to?
To change the way the party's operating? That's a good question. I mean, I presented my talk to a lot of the LNC members, many of whom are new. I got the feeling, and this may just be an incorrect assessment, but I got the feeling that the LNC members had their own plan and wanted to execute it. Whereas the rank and file came up to me and they said, some of them said, I've been thinking the same thing. I'm so glad you articulated it. There were some comments about this is, really, I really appreciated your talk because I can see the direction now we need to go. So, there's kind of a mixed reaction because I did talk to a couple of LNC members that I could see really were dedicated to a particular way of being that and weren't picking up on the necessity for the educating people coming into the party and especially our candidates on the NAP. But the reason I'm optimistic, is because I'm a scientist, and we're evolving as a species, right? we're a little more civilized in general than we were, say, 1,000 years ago, back maybe. 10,000 AD. Yeah, we weren't doing so well. Okay, so we're evolving. And the thing is, because everybody has self-interest, I think that eventually people with enlightened self-interest are going to go, I want to live in a world that's full of harmony and abundance, not war and pestilence, and starvation. They're going to go, we need liberty for that. Clearly, the evidence is in, it's a done deal. So let's go that route, and that's why I'm optimistic because we're all, we all have self-interest and almost all of us will value harmony and abundance over controlling our neighbor. There are going to be some people who would rather live in war and pestilence than as long as they can control the situation to some extent or control other people because they're built that way. But I don't think that's That's not the norm. The norm is wanting to have universal harmony and abundance. So I am very optimistic long term. If we don't blow ourselves up or enslave ourselves in a way that we can't get out of, then I think liberty is going to be the norm in the not too distant future. I don't know if I'll live to see it, Ernie. I don't know if you will, but I think it's coming. And
I got it. You got to move to the desert to get it. But, I mean, I got it.
Yeah. Okay. So anyhow, that's and that's all we can do is do what we can to make it happen. And if I don't live to see it, it's okay, because you know what? I really wouldn't do it any differently. Even if I knew it wasn't going to happen, I don't think I could live my life any differently.
Exactly.
Frankly.
Exactly.
Because
I like
speaking
sleeping.
truth is you gotta speak your truth, right? And do whatever you can to help humankind survive and thrive. And I mean, it's a gift to be able to understand this and spread the word. It's a real gift. I feel very privileged to be, working in this. And so even if it doesn't happen, I think I'd have to do it.
I understand exactly what you're saying. What did you think of the accuracy, the validity of voting? I mean, it's not, a lot of people argue, it's, you're wielding power, whatever, like Senator Spooner going, well, it's in self-defense against whatever, or it's got to, I never trusted the mechanism. I never trusted the laws. I never trusted it's not fair. I don't trust the computers. I don't trust, and I don't think I know. It's Maricopa County, Arizona. All the stuff I've been screaming for decades, all of a sudden it's Maricopa. I go, yeah, well, you think I've been telling you? This is bad. So I'm going, what do you think of the government-run or private, they get the program, but the actual physical act of computerized voting, whatever, the accuracy of it, take away the morality of voting, whatever that entails, but just the mechanism being representative. That's why I initially didn't trust it, because I knew it wasn't representative of the majority of people. It was so bad, we just stop voting, screw it, do something else. I'm of that opinion now. I'm it's not like I don't think maybe local or something like that, but can they get control of trillions, tens of trillions of dollars? Can they, by controlling a ballot box? Can they? Well, then they are. I think because they can. Just say it. That's my opinion. What's your opinion? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the voting is rigged to some extent. Now, I don't know to what extent it is rigged.
Enough extent.
So I can't. But yeah, I think the whole system's really corrupt. Now, the extent to which it's corrupt, of course, depends on the vulnerability and the people in place to, check it and stuff. But, I don't know if you remember, we had a candidate in Nevada about 30, 40 years ago who ran exit polls. I think she was running for state rep. And according to the exit polls, she won the election.
Tamara Clark.
By 2/3 of the vote. Okay, yes, thank you. And then when the results came in, she only got 1/3 of the votes. So, that kind of, and I was a campaign manager for a candidate in Kentucky, and he was allowed in to see the vote counting. I was not, but he reported to me that every single ballot box had a broken seal. I mean, this has been going on forever, even before the machines. So, this is, if people can take advantage, they will, because they think it serves them. But in the long run, maintaining a system of control does not serve us. And the reason it doesn't is because that control prevents the innovation that really helps humankind survive and thrive. Because of all this control, there aren't, for example, it doesn't matter how much money you have. If you don't have if the cancer you have is not curable by any medicine on the market, then you're not in a very good position, because innovation is what drives true wealth. And it doesn't matter how much money you have. Wealth is the goods and services that are created by the inventiveness of people. So it backfires. And once people realize this, I think a large proportion of the people who think they profit by all this graft might get a big shock one day and wake up and realize that the system they're supporting and that they're milking is also the system that's causing their children to die of disease that can't be cured, causing them to die early because we don't have the longevity medicines that we otherwise would have. This is something I think people don't realize, like Bill Gates, who wants to cull the population. Who are we culling? The next
He's got
Einstein?
a death panel.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, eventually, a lot of the people who are right now a part of what we would call the bad system are going to wake up that it's not in their best self-interest to do this.
This
and
is,
of course, having worked in pharmacy. Go ahead.
No, having worked in what?
Oh, I was going to say, having worked in the pharmaceutical industry, I especially think about when I hear stories about pharmaceutical executives who are squelching innovation in some way.
It's evil intent. All you got to look is for the profit motive. Because when Ron Paul was running, what would you do? Well, Barry Ruwart would be head of the FDA. That fixed everything. So that kind of stuff. We are so small, but the elite and they, them, those are even smaller. What happens is, because of their sociopathic tendencies and abilities to ignore how it's hurting other people, they're willing to do any and everything. Pick me, give me a bunch of APAC money and I'll get you whatever, kind of 90 hookers and green fees. This is how it works. I remember we used to joke, and now it's almost like it's come to pass because it was so common. In the 90s, you go, God, you got to be a, videotape pedophile, the minimum job requirement to be congressman. Well, how far off were we? So it's going to correct itself because it's self-correcting. Humanity marches on. It always has, and that's what we can take solace in. And we have the philosophy of we win. In the end, we win. In the end, we win. Win what? I don't know. Leave me aloneism. I'm not looking to, get anything other than we're able to produce. We're able to create. We're able to own and be happy, So this is where it's going. And I wanted to just make sure that you knew Ernie's on it this time. Here we go again. And, enjoy the holidays. Behind the scenes, we're getting stuff kind of ready and so on. But it's just like with nobody even knew I started the Lovolution for like a year. And Brian Doherty outed me, because that wasn't the point. It was a decentralized, spontaneous order. We knew what was going to happen. Help people thing. You want to kill a movement, try to control it. I give you the LP. So, it's just, so this is not going to be controlled, but we're going to do what we're going to do, and other people are going to do what they're going to do. Get ready, because this is going to benefit Liberty International probably more than anything else, because it's sourced from you, the author's from you. You have your books. Ken's got his books. You got your international connections. Whenever my friends and fans, certainly my daughters, they go to Europe, I'm calling Ken years ago saying, all right, they're going to these countries. Give me your contact, so he'd give me different people, businessmen, people that owned, hotels and other businesses and, taxi driver, whatever, that they had phone numbers. I give to my daughter and say, all right, you get in trouble in Athens, call this number. In Rome, call this number, So you guys have contacts everywhere. And the youth.
Yeah.
The young. This thing is starting. We've been supportive from the beginning on all of this stuff. And now I'm just asking that you guys just know it's coming and take advantage of it as much as you possibly can, because what does it do? Frees more minds. Freedom's rebirth. Freedom's phoenix.
Yeah.
What I've been all about all this time, and Mary knows it. Don't you? Don't you? Yes, you do. Now, so thank you for coming on, Mary. Mary Ruwart, this Dr. Mary Ruwart, ethicist, moral, I'll say, was it moralist? That's probably not a good word. But, but this is the intellectual and moral case for freedom. That's what we're missing. That is what the youth need to go through. That's what the planet needs to understand, the ethical decision to just leave people alone. As long as they're not bothering you, what the hell do you care? This is going to dominate, and because of the internet and tools like this, it's going to sweep the world, because it always does. That's why America's like the shining light on the hill kind of thing until they put the light out. Well, they're trying to put the light out, and we're going to reignite it. Reigniting the flames of freedom, uncovering the secrets and exposing the lies. So that's what we're working on. Mary, thanks for spending so much time with us. I know, I apologize for the delay. Made it difficult to have a conversation, but we got it out. I feel better. I haven't talked to Mary. I'm good.
Good.
So what websites, what think you want to send people to that's been listening to this?
Mm-hmm. Well, my website is ruwart.com. That's my last name.com, RUWART.com. On social media, it's Mary J. Ruwart, PhD, or Mary Ruwart. I've got 2 different Facebook pages. I'm on Instagram with my name, and also X. So,
what's your favorite? What do you think of X?
Well, I certainly like that we've got at least one semi-free social media. I like it. I've got good followers on everything. In fact, my following, Ernie, has just skyrocketed, especially on Facebook, but also on the others. And I don't know what happened. I don't know if I was shadow banned and all of a sudden I'm seeing the real numbers, or if somebody with a lot of followers has found me. I don't know, but I appreciate, the fact that people are doing that, because that means our message is getting out. And of course,
you gotta get another bump. Here it comes. 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 I'm so glad, that you're there. Liberty International, Yasik, Ken, you, Mary. That one big giant less thing I got to do. All I got to do, send them your way. That's what we're doing. Thank you very much for coming on. This is a great remnant. I think this argument for a lot of the people in the libertarian movement and so on, they knew that we had been advocating that this was going to happen, that this was going to go this way, that their method of, metrics, measuring vote totals and money raised and all that kind of was not going to be it. That's fleeting. It's how many minds you can free. It's how many, the youth, the generation that you can resurrect the knowledge of these principles, and how popular they are around the world. It's coming. I feel it. It's always darkest for the dawn. There's going to be an economic whatever. Hopefully, audience, I've been screaming it for decades. You bought a bunch of silver, I keep telling you. Well, now, here we go. So this is going to be, that's why with crypto, a lot of those were worried. They got a bunch of these libertarian, freedom-oriented people that have resources now. What are you going to do with all that money? Be free. Bite me, that's what. So this is going to be interesting and fun, and it's just starting, Mary. Thanks for coming on and just letting me ramble, because it's been 2 hours and 23 minutes that we recorded, and I could go another hours, but, got to shut up sometime. Thank you very much. Peace, Mary.
Well, thank you, Ernie. And let me just give the URL for Liberty International. It's liberty-intl.org. Liberty-intl.org. And again, Ernie, thanks for having me, and thanks for all you do to help make the world a better place.
Boom! You're very welcome, and I am so appreciative, always have been, of you and your demeanor and your work and the respect you have. It's been awesome. Thank you very much. Peace.